Again, thank you so much for coming out. This work that I'm going to be talking about tonight and that will hopefully serve as a springboard for discussion about issues in general related to preservation is part of a larger book project, and it will be very obvious that I'm boiling things down mightily for a half hour or so to give you an overview of what I've found at Gettysburg. But before I start into that, I don't want to belabor the thank yous that we've been hearing already, but I really do appreciate everyone who made this possible, the partnership, the university, and in particular Alan, the students who are helping. But as you will find when we get to the panel discussion, Alan and the other people who organized this really had an awareness and a sensitivity to the complexities of the issues that are related to preservation at Gettysburg. And as they put together the panel, I was just really thrilled to see who we were going to be up here with and who you get to hear from. So again, allow this to be introduction, maybe jot down some questions you want to ask, and we will proceed. The figure banks left and right dashes 50 more yards and then freezes under the cover of a shrub of Japanese barberry. The concealment is nearly complete. Only vapor rises above the leafy branches as the exhaled breath meets the cool morning air. A trained sniper, of course, could use the vapor as a guide to pierce the greenery from 100 yards and to drop the figure, even with the muzzle-loaded rifles of the Civil War era. On this morning, however, the vapor rises from a white-tailed deer to join with the calm early morning battlefield to provide evidence of more than just occupancy. The deer is one of many symbols of regeneration and enduring peace on the Gettysburg battlefield. But it also serves as one of many flashpoints for the difficulty of managing the various perspectives that compose Gettysburg's sacred meaning. In July 1863, even the deer knew to stay away from the field of battle. But the noise of battle did not necessarily scare the deer away. Overhunting and deforestation made white-tailed deer an endangered species in Pennsylvania, with an estimated population of less than 1 million in 1900. It's a good time here to talk about that. I don't know if it's as popular down here, but everybody on my way in Altoona is hunting. A century later, they had returned en masse to become a nuisance to farmers, late-night drivers, and park administrators. In Gettysburg, though, the graceful creature hiding behind the barberry shrub spent much of the 1990s as the focus of one of the latest debates over what this site means and how it can best be preserved. Behind each of these arguments, though, is a larger question about how the natural elements of the battlefield factor in to the ideas of the sacred and the ethic of preservation at Gettysburg. At Gettysburg, although the origin of this preservation is undeniable, 3 or 4 generations of preservationists have administered the cultural resources connected with the outcome and meaning of the battle between Union and Confederate forces that transpired here in July 1863. Through each of these efforts to fashion Gettysburg a sacred landscape, the natural components have played an important role. At Gettysburg, each generation defined its own culture of preservation to construct or maintain this sacred landscape. The culture of preservation grows out of variables for each era, including the meaning of concepts such as war, the Civil War, race, and slavery, and even the term sacred. In the changing cultural landscape of meaning and representation, the natural features of the battlefield form a commons that is reevaluated by each generation of preservationists. Nature has mattered to each generation. Personally, for me, the nature of this place mattered when I studied at Gettysburg College, and particularly when I returned to teach history and to help establish the environmental studies program there. I watched contests over the sacred firsthand and then set out to understand its roots. Nature plays an important role in this story. In fact, nature played an important role in the battle, particularly in the form of topography, including the South Mountain, for which the speaker series is named. In the tradition of the South Mountain Speaker Series, my comments tonight will emphasize the role of Gettysburg's nature in ideas of preservation today. However, first I will briefly discuss significant shifts in the management of the battlefield landscape in an effort to provide historical context for the changes exerted on Gettysburg's landscape in the 21st century. This is the dangerous part of the talk, because as you can tell, I could talk a whole lot about each of the images that you see up here, about each of the concepts, and we need to keep things moving along quite briskly. So one of the promises I want you to make to me is that you will remember anything in particular you'd like to find out more about, to ask questions about, and to make sure that during our question period that you bring stuff up. Because the way I approached the talk tonight was to take these concepts that I've laid out for you here, the way I've organized the story of preservation at Gettysburg, and to give you one slide essentially about each of these. A couple of them get more than one. But then to move on to the nature of the story that I'd like to spend most of our time on. You'll also notice that I have questions on the last slide and on this one coming up, and I'll return to them on the final slide. Things to keep in mind that as I've studied the span of the history of this site are questions that have kept coming up, and certainly come up with current issues related to the battlefield as well. These phases, as I call them, recovery, definition, construction, commemoration, tourist attraction, and then landscape restoration, are basically of my own creation. They are outgrowths of the field. As a historian, I actually use the field of cultural geography quite a bit. And it is cultural geographers who have made an intense study of sacred landscapes. And I use a lot of their terminology in the second slide that you saw, but then also in coming up with these different phases. But now to move on.